días a todas y a todos. Sean todos muy bienvenidos a este ciclo de inauguraciones académicas año 2022 de la Facultad de Medicina Veterinaria y Agronomía de la Universidad de las Américas. Comentarles que esta exposición cuenta con transmisión simultánea inglés-español. En su barra inferior debe buscar opción intérprete y debe seleccionar idioma español. A continuación dejo con ustedes a Lorena Jofré, decana de la Facultad de Medicina Veterinaria y Agronomía de la Universidad de las Américas.
Hola, muy buenos días a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Saludamos a quienes nos acompañan y veo que incluso desde el extranjero, Buenos Aires, por ahí nos saludaban algunas personas que están en el chat. Bienvenida a las autoridades que nos acompañan, estudiantes, docentes, egresados, amigos en general que nos han querido acompañar. Y por supuesto saludar especialmente a Hans Herren, al doctor Hans, que nos ha querido acompañar el día de hoy en la inauguración de la Facultad de Medicina Veterinaria y Agronomía de Universidad de las Américas. Estamos muy contentos de iniciar nuestro año académico abordando un tema tan relevante para nuestra facultad y para toda la comunidad como son los desafíos del sistema alimentario, retos y oportunidades del área agropecuaria en la alimentación sostenible y saludable, dado el contexto mundial, ¿no es cierto?, y el que se proyecta a futuro. Desafíos relacionados como el cambio climático, One Health, una sola salud, y el impacto de estas problemáticas en la biodiversidad son parte de lo que queremos conversar con nuestro invitado el día de hoy. Antes de presentar al doctor Herren, los quiero invitar a reflexionar sobre temas que nos interesan profundizar, dado el contexto nacional y mundial que estamos viviendo. Estamos comprometidos como facultad e involucrados en los cambios que como sociedad debemos enfrentar. Cambios en los sistemas agroalimentarios y en las prácticas agropecuarias que están afectando la biodiversidad e impactando nuestros recursos naturales. Seguramente han escuchado lo importante del concepto del enfoque One Health. Hoy en día se describe que 3 de cada 4 enfermedades infecciosas emergentes en humanos tienen su origen en animales domésticos o silvestres. Y cada vez resulta más evidente que los factores determinantes son la alteración del ecosistema y la pérdida de la biodiversidad. Hemos visto cómo el COVID-19 ha amenazado la salud de las personas y dado un vuelco a la economía mundial, poniendo así en riesgo los medios de subsistencia, el bienestar y la seguridad en general en el mundo entero. Ante esta situación cada vez es más apremiante la emergencia climática y medioambiental, necesitamos involucrarnos con más fuerza para colaborar en el desarrollo sostenible, replantearnos nuestra relación con la naturaleza, de modo que podamos hacer frente a las enfermedades donde quiera que se manifiesten, humanos, animales, plantas o medio ambiente. Como facultad reitero nuestro compromiso en profundizar nuestras acciones en docencia, en vinculación con el medio e investigación, que aporten con el mandato general de poner fin al hambre, promoviendo la transformación a favor de los sistemas agroalimentarios resilientes y sostenibles que fomenten ecosistemas saludables. Es por ello que hemos querido comenzar el año con la charla magistral del doctor Hans Herren. El doctor Herren es agrónomo y entomólogo suizo, uno de los principales expertos mundiales en control biológico de plagas y agricultura sostenible. Realizó sus estudios postdoctorales en control biológico de insectos en la Universidad de California en Berkeley y ha sido destacado con varios premios por su contribución al control orgánico de plagas, evitando con ello una crisis alimentaria en África. Destacan el Premio Mundial de Alimentación, el Premio Nobel Alternativo, entre muchos otros. El doctor Hans es un científico reconocido internacionalmente por sus aportes en investigación y desarrollo en capacidades en agricultura, salud y medio ambiente. Actualmente presidente y director ejecutivo del Instituto Millennium y cofundador y presidente de la Fundación Suiza Biovisión. Agradecemos nuevamente al doctor Herren que nos acompaña el día de hoy en esta charla magistral, en esta profundización y reflexión que queremos realizar. Le damos la bienvenida, doctor. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Doctor.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for the introduction also. I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you. Good. So let me then take over, if I can say so. We'll share my screen. Here, share screen. Okay. All right. So is that all right? Maybe a thumbs up. Yeah. So again, I'm very honored with this invitation to make this presentation today at UDLA. I think it's very a good timing to be talking about transformation of the food system, not the least because of all the challenges we have right now around the globe and in the three dimensions of sustainable development, being in the economics, in the environmental, or also in the social areas. So I sort of choose the title of the imperative and solutions for a new food system. And given that you're an agricultural university, may be of a great interest. What I will also try to do is to connect this with one of our major forum and framework for transformation, not only the food system, but from our own total way of living, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, which I assume that everybody, faculty, but also students in particular, know about and discuss and see, how they can contribute and how can they maybe with their career contribute more to meet the SDGs. We know that the deadline is 2030. That's very short. That's like almost tomorrow. But there will be another 15 years of work, whatever they will be called, SDG 2045 maybe. But the important part is that we try to achieve as much as possible of the targets and goals which have been set already way back in 2015. All right, so let's go on with this. The whole, for me, a lot of this transformation started during my studies already, way back when I decided not to go the route where most people were going in agriculture, that is using pesticides, synthetic fertilizer to increase production. And during all my career, basically, I was working on the other side, on the alternatives to this upcoming way back then, the Green Revolution industrial agricultural model. And it sort of crystallized in the report, Agriculture at a Crossroads, which is a report which is also called the IAASTD report, which was the biggest report written on agriculture on a global scale and regional scale ever. It was published in 2009. Had more than 2,000 pages, 400 people who worked on it, which is sort of the Bible. I mean, it is a big thing. Okay, so if you, as long as that's only one part of it, there is 5 sub-regional reports, decision makers, summaries, etc. I did double check quickly, actually. I couldn't remember. I was the co-chair of this whole operation, which took 4 years. So it was a huge undertaking. And Chile, unfortunately, is not a signatory and has contributed actually very little compared to some other South American country. Obviously, Argentina actually was part of it. Since we have people from Argentina listening in. But I would recommend anyone to go and look. There is on my PowerPoint a link to these reports if anyone is interested. And I think one of the most important things we said in this report is that business as usual is not an option. And I think that's for me, I think one of the most important component of this report, saying that we cannot continue to do what we have been doing so far in terms of agriculture and food system, and that we need to move on to agroecology. And agroecology is nothing new for you in Latin America, because that's where the term has been coined. And you have many very good scientists who have been working on this. Miguel Altieri, which actually is from Chile, he was a colleague at UC Berkeley, has been one of the champions of agroecology in the Americas, but also on a global scale. So nothing new. And I think that's where we always said, way back then, that's the route to choose. Since then, well, there's been many reports, Land Outlook, there's been this transformation of food system, which I co-edited with another important member of the IASTD team that just came out not a year and a half ago, the making of a paradigm shift. That was published basically 10 years or 11 years after the original report. But we had the IPBES, which is the biodiversity organization, which has now published a number of reports. Just recently, another one saying that our global food system is the primary driver for biodiversity loss. Okay, this has been repeated and repeated, and more now, global food system is broken. That's what everybody says. Very few people, unfortunately, I have taken it seriously, and it always needs a crisis somewhere for people to really start to think, oh my God, yeah, we got a problem somewhere here with our food system. Let's do something. But I think we could do a lot better than that, be ahead of the game and not always behind it. And the fact that the science academies from many countries, also on a global scale, I say we need to make some changes, shows that yes, there is the need for change. And the last one, just a few weeks ago, the latest climate change report, Group 3, which I think is really mentioning this time around about the food system and how important the food system change will be to meet the targets. I mean, if we can, but that would mean we should have started yesterday, I think. And the target is no more than 1.5 degrees higher temperature by 2050. So I'm not sure we can meet those targets, but let's try hard. And I'm very happy, actually, and many people out there, that the IPCC has finally taken on also and included the food system, agriculture, into their discussion as a solution. Because we all know agriculture is part of the problem, so it has to be part of the solution. And when we go a little bit, I don't know how many of you may have actually looked into this already, but there's just a few points of what this report says. And I think it's very essential that we look at this so that, we are nowhere on track to keeping the warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And that's that's a big statement. Because even the more optimistic people say we may end up at 2.5 or 2.9 would be basically catastrophic. So this overshoot is really something we have to be aware of and do everything we can in our own activities, whatever is scientific activities, your work activities, but also your behavioral activities, to try to help keep below this 2 degrees. And again, if we want to do anything, people will say, oh, we don't have the money, we don't know how to do it and all this. No, we know that this is the thing. We know exactly what to do and we can do it. Okay, it's a matter of investment, but it's better now to invest now, because every day you wait, it will be more costly. And again, way back at the Paris IPCC meeting, it already was said, we have solutions, and if we want, we can implement those and do what we need to do. There's also an issue, and it has been discussed finally, of the inequity around the globe. That's one of the SDG goal also, is to reduce inegalities within the global population. And I think we cannot continue to have 1% of the richest, be polluting basically as much as the 50% poorest. I mean, that's not the way to go. We need actually a huge reduction in the developed countries in order to allow for the developing countries to come up. They can't make the changes as fast as we can, so we need to allow them, some opportunities. So, by not doing what we could have done already since many years, I think we are jeopardizing our future, and there's no reason for this. except that there's no political will. There's a lot of discussion, but when it comes down to do it, the big corporation, the big people still feel more important to protect their old investment rather than to make new investments in something new. Now, again, this is all with a few exceptions, but these exceptions are not good enough. And just thinking about conflicts, which are also adding, I think, to our climate change problems, just as the one right now in Ukraine, it is not something we can afford any longer. I think we need to also have a peaceful world and deal differently with human conflicts than war. So again, we need to mitigate. We can do some adaptation, and in agriculture, people have been trying to work on adaptation. But I think what we need to do mostly is mitigation. We need to reduce the amount of carbon which we put out. And so these greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced. And again, we know that in agriculture, there are two main culprits. One is the livestock, as you know, in particular cattle. The other one is the way we treat our soils. Having this large-scale agriculture with no trees anymore left anywhere, big fields, the soil is laid bare most of the year. That's all increasing our greenhouse gas emission. And I think we need to really be aware of this and change to more agroforestry systems, organic permaculture, agricultural system, which we know, number one, are productive enough to nourish the world, everybody, and will actually reverse the climate change, not contribute to it. So all these management, like reforestation, better land management, I think are essential to try to do something. And again, we can plant more trees, but we still have to leave land open for food. There are also regions in the world where the landscape is good for ranching. So let's do ranching there rather than where we could do something else. And all these, I think, will have to be implemented. The sooner the better. And the fact that the IPCC has picked this up is fantastic, I think. And when one sort of looks a little bit what we can expect and why and from where, at 1.5 degree, we're still gonna do damage to our biodiversity. We're gonna have still 14% less. We already have lost half of it, at least. So that's very difficult to lose so much more. We know that we're going to have more water stress and more food, let's say, insecurity. And again, the more higher temperature we have, the more difficult it is to adapt to these. One way of adapting is actually to move on to some other areas and use what we have, or to change maybe some of the varieties and the crops we grow. By 2 degrees, it's more. And by 3 degrees, here you can see on this table, it gets even worse. So just this to show you, how imperative it is to make those changes. When we look at another part of the food system and another crisis, it's the health crisis, which is linked to our food system, from hunger and undernutrition, all the diet-related diseases. We have food-related diseases. And then we have all the environmental health, which comes with mass production of food, like air pollution, for example. Air pollution could be from, again, pesticide drift, as we know. It's quite prevalent wherever large-scale agriculture is being done. There's a lot of stories out of Argentina, of Brazil, America. I mean, there's many places where I think large-scale agriculture is influencing very heavily human health. It's actually interesting that a number of campuses here in California, of the UC California system, have now banned herbicides, and glyphosate in particular, out of concern for the students who live on these campuses. So it just shows that there is something happening, but it's not happening really at the scale needed in the field. So, so you can ask yourself, is this model of agriculture, which is still being promoted today with huge amount of subsidies to farmers who go on with this industrial green revolution type agriculture. Is that what we want more of, or do we want to change? And I think, at least for me and for many, I think this has been clear. Another issue which we have is the rationalization. The reductionism we have in agriculture is to larger fields of the same crop, and also very narrow genetic bases. And that in livestock, it's the same as in plants. The more narrow your genetic basis, the more prone to major disaster you will be. It's also not very good for your health to eat only corn or grains. I think we want a very diverse diet, and a diverse diet will also produce a better environment, as we know. So again, if we look what's happening right now with agriculture, is still moving in the wrong direction, again, with a few exceptions, farmers who decide to take matters in their own hands and try to make the change. But there's an enormous pushback from big agriculture, big ag business, not to change anything, and actually to go even in the other direction. But let's look quickly at, why are we in the situation we're in altogether? I think we need to think about this. So when you look back, we had ecosystem services, pollination, natural pest control, water cycling, nutrient cycling, and a lot of farmers out there. And so what they were producing our food in an environment where basically we could survive very well. And even if we were to do this today, we could, because ecosystem services are the basis of a productive, sustainable, and long-term sustainable agriculture. They are the basis for a regenerative agriculture, an agriculture which leaves your land in better condition than when you found it. And I think that's what's very essential. So we got rid of this, and mostly the industry, they thought, oh, we can make money to replace those natural ecosystem services with artificial ones, from more irrigation, pesticides, fertilizer, GMOs, and name it. And so basically, for one reason, also is to produce more cheap food, and controlled by a few, as we will see later. So this is where we, I think, went wrong way back now 60, 70 years ago with the Green Revolution, and just after World War II with the invention of nitrogen fertilizer, which I think was part of the big problem. We need to realize that we have planetary boundaries, and I'm sure you're all aware of these. The very important study which were made by Johan Rockström back in 2015, where he and his colleagues showed, how we are overshooting many of our boundaries. Biodiversity, for example, freshwater, the land use change, the phosphate, nitrogen. So all that we are moving from our green area into the yellow and the red. And in a follow-up studies, Bruce Campbell looked at, okay, how much is agriculture and the food system part of this? And you can see the black dots there on the right-hand side shows, how much agriculture has been contributing to this. So to me, it doesn't need to be a rocket scientist here. You can see that agriculture really is a big culprit and needs to be called that, and also call for a change. So this type of food, I think, needs to be looked at, because it ends up to give this type of landscape. This is in Malaysia, where we're planting more and more palm oil plants. This is a picture from Brazil, soybean production. I mean, these are the creation of deserts. This is rapeseed in Europe, and here corn in the Midwest. So this is not where we want to go. The dark clouds are coming very fast, and I think we want a different type of agriculture, because here we have either too much water and enormous soil erosion, and it takes millennia to build soil. And we have droughts where it's very difficult to help with anything, because if there's a drought, there's usually no water in the well either to do the irrigation. An example is right now here in California, where many farmers have left their land fallow because the main dams which provide water are well below the normal level, and the water has to be kept there for human use rather than just for agriculture. Okay, so where do we stand here? We used to have a system of agriculture right hand side, which was sort of in harmony with the environment. And that led again to sort of some changes then eventually forced through industry, changes to diets which became more heavy in meat, which then it eventually ended up to produce this dark black agriculture. So what I want to say with this slide is that unless we change our diet, we won't really be able to change the system. Solutions, yes, we got plenty of them, and agroecology has been one which been promoted now since many years, and in particular the report Agriculture at a Crossroads, from Stephen Gleasman's 5 levels of agroecology. He's at the University of California in Santa Cruz, to FAO, the 10 elements, and the high-level panel of experts, 13 principles. You can see that we are starting to think about not only the production and the plants and the animals and the soil and the water, but also about the people. Very important that we bring people into this equation, that they are part of agriculture, particularly the farmers in particular, but everybody in that, to make it a more circular economy. So we need an integration of all the elements in the food system to devise a new and many different new food systems, depending where we are in the world. One important aspect also in the food system, new one, is the localization and the diversification. So we need the more localized and more diversified. And here I wanted to show a little bit, agroecology is sort of the black ring. Everything else which is sort of comes in there, permaculture, organic, nature positive, which is the latest trend, are only partly in that circle, covering the 3 dimensions of the social, the environmental, and the economic. So I think it's important to consider this. And that's why we say, look, we need to put everything inside that black ring to cover the 3 dimensions. So where do we need to go from where to where? From this industrial farming to an agroecological system, which is not only small scale. I think that's important to understand. We can do agroecological practices also in larger scale. So from uniformity, from all the synthetic inputs, the pervert subsidies, automation, we may need some, but again, I think we have to see how these animal factories, land ownership, markets, global markets, cheap food, move over to something quite different. And you can read here through the options we have ahead of us. And I think they're all actually feasible. We can increase diversity. We know how to do biocontrol. We know that subsidies could be actually used for something else, like for change of the system, not for the same stuff. And more empowerment for women and youth, essential. Integrate animal husbandry, eliminate gender and land bias. And I think one other is the internalization of externalities. So the true costing, I think, would be important to start to integrate. And if we have more diversity, as Garibaldi here has shown, we have also more employment, we have a more diverse economy all around. So high crop diversity leads to other diversities, as we would like to see. That's just one example I want to show about the systems which actually work. Again, it's sort of an agroforestry multi-cropping system in which basically you bring more carbon into the ground, you bring more nitrogen into the ground with the way you practice, you plant your crops. So you use legumes for the fertilization, you use perennial plants in your system, and this system highly productive. 3 to 4 times more than your conventional hybrid GMO corn bean system. So it can be done. We just have to get going. Again, so from the problem, we want to go to the solutions. And when people think that, and because of the war in Ukraine, they say, oh yeah, this agroecology, organic, no, we need to put this aside right now because it doesn't produce enough. We need to go back to industrial, large-scale production. This is all wrong. Actually, regenerative, organic, agroecological agriculture produces more and better for the long term. And I think that's where we want to go. So the solutions are all there, just let's implement them. And if we implement these solutions, we will actually tick off many of the SDGs. And this is actually essential, that we find ways of really using the SDGs to meet the planetary boundary goals through this transformation of agriculture. But what is standing in the way? There are a lot of pushback right now by this concentration of power in the middle there. You can see that thing. That's where all the big agribusiness controls our food system. And from the export orientation, everyone wants to export food, depending on an old way of doing things. What is your success? How do you measure it? Kilogram per hectare? No, we should do it health per hectare, like Vandana Shiva says. And it's not only calories, it is healthy food. And we need to think long-term, not short-term, not only maximize the short-term profit, but I think long-term. The compartmentalized thinking, again, it's just the reductionism, which is in the heads of many people. Oh, let's simplify and do more of it. That's, again, wrong direction when you work with nature. And feed the world, again, we say localize, do more local food systems, and the expectation of cheap food, that's over. We need to have food which is affordable for everybody. That's why we need to deal with inequity, not with putting the food price down so that few people can get richer. And I think these are important aspects. I think we all, and you will have to look at students, and practitioners later on in your life, how do we put that system back into balance? So research innovation, that's where we're going to be, mostly of you, very active. So we need more transdisciplinary integrated agricultural research, co-create knowledge with farmers, and invest more, get more investment in agroecology, research and development. The policy has to be coherent. You cannot just have policies which one gives subsidies for green evolution and the other one try to promote organic agriculture. That's not going to work. So I think we need to do better. And again, looking at what will contribute to the big goals we have, like the SDGs, climate change, and disease. And we know from modeling work we have done at the Millennium Institute ourselves, how agroecology can push all these goals forward very quickly, very well. So again, what can I do? Oh, less is better, buy smart, consume less, waste less, I think is important. Think about your own health when you buy. More diverse, buy organic, wherever it exists, sustainably produced, and also eat diversified and seasonally adapted. And again, socially responsible means, again, shorten the distance from what you do to the farmers, and be ready to pay the actual cost, like not only on your food, but on your phone, on your whatever you do, pay full cost. And as it was said on the World Women's Day, if you ate today, thank a woman farmer. We know that a lot of the farmers out there are women, work for free, very hard work. And I think it's time also to recognize this and invest more in women farmers and the youth in particular. So I hope I've given you some hints on where to go. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Hans, por la exposición. Tenemos varias preguntas y agradecemos también, a propósito, que me acaban de avisar que tenemos varios agricultores y mujeres agricultoras también participando en esta charla y escuchándote, así que muchas gracias por también el último comentario. La primera pregunta Tiene relación, dice, ¿qué se viene con respecto a la normativa en relación al control de calidad de pesticidas biológicos? ¿Cómo y cuándo se establecerán protocolos para, por ejemplo, concentraciones de controladores biológicos o cepas antagónicas? Una pregunta, la primera pregunta, Hans. No sé si tienes algún comentario con respecto a ello.
Thank you. Yeah, this is actually a very big topic. And as a farmer myself, I know the problem with weeds and how to manage. It is actually quite a concern for many farmers who want to do something different. So the first thing when you talk about herbicide, yes, there are organic herbicides which are based on like natural products like formic acid or from like acids which are burning the plant. The problem there is that they're fairly expensive and not as effective as like you have to Roundup or glyphosate, as we know. But I think land management, the way you manage your crops, has a lot to do with dealing with your weeds. And there has to be a transition period from a place, when we have this monocrops where we are using a lot of herbicide in, to have a set cropping system where the crops cover a whole lot more of the ground more often. So to me, it looks like we know actually quite well how to do it. And the little system I showed you on the slide uses a cover crop, so there's no more weeds. Actually, it fights the weeds practically. So there are options. Policies, yes, we need policies. We need to ban those bad herbicides like glyphosate, for example, which is one of the many very toxic herbicides, and do what we know in the terms of alternative. There's also mechanical weeding. There are machines who can do the job. But I think it's time to draw the line here and say, no, enough of this. So when, yesterday, it's not so that we don't know for many years now of the problem of using herbicides. Unfortunately, again, in many of the research institutions or the National Ag Research, also universities, have not done enough research in terms of how to deal with weeds, and went along with the herbicide is an easy thing. And when we think about this, we need to have more investments from the public sector, from the government, into universities, into the national system, to find alternatives. The private sector will not fund that. You cannot delegate to the private sector, because the private sector wants something they can make money every year. If you use an integrated growing system where herbicides are not used, there's nothing to sell every year. And so you can understand why we are in the system we are in right now, as I said earlier, because it's based on short-term profit orientation.
Gracias, Hans. Tenemos varias preguntas, vamos a ir seleccionando algunas, una más general. Dice, muchas veces toda esta información no llega al consumidor. Si uno de los factores importantes para mantener la integración de todos los elementos es la educación del consumidor, ¿cómo podemos desde la academia hacer esto para mantener el impacto o aplicar este impacto esperado?
Very good question. Thank you. Yeah. How, when you talk about academia, so yeah, what can you do? Well, I know you can lead with example. I think, sort of, there is, I think, plenty experience around, one could go to the consumer with. And in an era where we have so many media options, maybe it's time that universities also do more, have a bigger media presence. Whatever you're using, Facebook, TikTok, and all these things. I'm not really too much into this myself, but I know they are there, and they are actually influencing. And since in academia you have all the students, master, PhDs, that would be a great option, to look at where are the influencers for transformation within these young people. Whenever I look at something, I never see anything which is relevant to our survival. It's all about even more consumption. It's about, I don't know, I'm sorry to say so, but somehow looks pretty stupid to me. So where are the media presence with interesting messages, which, you know, are presented in a way people like to be presented the messages today. So it may even become an area of studies, you know, how to reach the consumers with positive messages about change.
Gracias, Hans. Otra pregunta acá, bueno, tenemos también muchos agradecimientos y felicitaciones por la charla. Y una pregunta dice, ¿cuánta importancia le están dando al registro de actividades en los campos? El uso de un cuaderno de campo no está regulado para la producción de alimentos inocuos. Inocuos, dice, a ver, me salté ahí.
And just the word registry, I'm not sure. You mean registration of products used in agriculture? Yeah, because I mean, there's a system, again, when you think about pesticides, herbicides, you know, fungicides and all this, I mean, they need to be registered and authorized for sale. And again, right now, many governments have delegated the testing to the industry. You cannot do that. You have to test this again in the national research organizations, and they have to be independent on the money of the private sector. So if they are depending on one hand for their funding from the industry, they can't tell them then, oh, that product is no good, this one is too poisonous, and we cannot do that, right? I mean, you can see there's a conflict of interest. And that's why I think the national and also the regional bodies and maybe again, FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, should be more active in this and less under pressure from the private sector. I mean, we have seen how much the private sector has been fighting, you know, against the ruling from the international organization who tests all kind of pesticides that glyphosate is carcinogenic or possibly carcinogenic. They just don't want that, and they put so much pressure that they eventually, many governments are actually going back from it. I think I do salute the Mexican government who has actually stand best. You know, they are not going to move back that they are banning glyphosate. So some of them, Sri Lanka and others, I mean, have done it. So it's coming, but the pressure, I think, is enormous. And that's why government and the registration authority has to be fully government funded and independent of pressure from the private sector.
Otra pregunta, Hans, yo creo que de alguna manera ya tocaste, pero a lo mejor más directamente esta pregunta plantea cómo se plantean las políticas de mejoramiento cuando las grandes empresas solo buscan ganancia y el gobierno de cierta forma no se hace presente en estas políticas. ¿De qué manera incentivar a los gobiernos, al Estado, a implementar estas políticas al corto plazo?
Yeah, this is again, I think, a very tricky one, because the government, who is the government? The government is the people you elect, in most places, into office. So I think we have to start to think differently here and put people in office who represent the people who elected them, not the one who gave them the money to be elected. Okay, I mean, that's the one thing, because quite often now, you see that people, in order to get elected, they need to have campaign, they need to go places, at big panels, go to TV and all this. That all costs a lot of money. And as long as they're going to be dependent on be given money from somebody, usually the private sector, they will be link to it. So I think we need our democratic system needs many improvement, and I think needs to be done so that you have a level playing field, which you don't have right now. So I think that's the one thing. The other one is that what kind of candidates do you have? And I keep saying now that unless the next generation who is going to take power actually stands for office, and I think more young people needs to go stand for office, be elected, so that they then can actually move those levers of power in the right direction. Because as long as you have the older generation there, again, they have these old deals with people, and it's very difficult to make the change. So I think not only people actually need to go and vote. In my own country, in Switzerland, whenever we have a poll, I mean, not even half the people go and vote. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I live in America, I vote by mail all the time. I still vote because I think this is a duty, you have to do it. So it's important people actually take this seriously. Just to say that, well, they do whatever they want anywhere they're in those political spheres, that just gives them the authority to do what they want if you are not getting involved. So to me, it looks like we can make change if we actually become really real levers and pushers for that change.
Gracias, Hans. Una pregunta más técnica. Dice, en Chile aún utilizamos bromuro de metilo, citoquininas, ciamida hidrogenada, entre otros compuestos complicados y cuestionados. ¿Cómo ven el corto plazo el uso de este tipo de agroquímicos?
So I think what the important thing with this is to look at what is done, on an international scene. And I think again the UN FAO, they have a codex. They know what can be used, what cannot be used in terms of chemicals, which one are banned or not. Sure, every country can then decide whatever they want to do. So to me, it looks like, and what's happened quite in a number of countries, is that people start to protest. They say, look, why do we have this product in this country when everybody else around it is not using it or has banned it? So I think you need to find, and the Pesticide Action Network, PAN. So this is an organization, you can Google it and you can find, I mean, they will help any group who wants to ban a product which should be banned. And they have a huge data bank of information to help you actually to make the case to your policymakers to change these things. The other, on the other hand, Chile has a lot of export, and on those crops you cannot use anything which is banned. For example, in the US, if it's exported to US, you cannot use anything which is banned in Europe if you export to Europe. If there's any residue found, the whole shipment will be sent back or destroyed. So I think there's a number of sort of like mechanisms we can try to put in place and use to avoid this. But to me, the best way is always, what is the alternative? And promote and come up with an alternative. Sometimes it needs some more research. Sometimes it needs to go look what is the neighbor doing, what are other people doing, in order to not use certain products which have been banned. Look at the alternative. So I think it does need some research, but please remember PAN, Pesticide Action Network. This is an organization which is well funded, and they have helped many countries, with pushing through legislation to ban pesticides.
Gracias, Hans.
Sure.
Una pregunta diferente con respecto al cambio climático. Dice, ¿usted considera que actualmente estamos en un punto de no retorno en el cambio climático?
We're close, but we're not yet there. I think that's why I'm an optimist. I think that we can handle it. I just like to not delegate, but ask for the support and the help of the next generation in doing it. I just don't trust that the people right now who are making decisions have the courage. And this is the thing, they don't have the courage to do what needs to be done. And we should be told to use less of everything here. We can manage. But as long as people, like, for example, okay, so with this war in Ukraine, what happened? Gas prices go up. So the politicians, in order to be re-elected, they try to lower the gas price. No, they should leave it there, even make it more expensive. We can easily deal with this. But again, people want to choose popular decisions because they think people are dumb out there. But okay, some are not. And I think we need to, again, say, all right, what is my contribution, my part to actually making sure that we're not reaching this point of no return. And we have a margin. The IPCC report now just came out, says, yes, we have some margin, but the more we do, the better.
Bueno, nos quedan unos pocos minutos y tengo aquí como 3 preguntas más, muchas más, pero estamos tratando de seleccionar algunas que representen diferentes áreas, diferentes temáticas. Aquí Héctor García dice, me pareció interesante la forma de mirar la producción, toneladas de producción saludable por hectárea. Y pregunta, ¿existen hoy experiencias que podamos mirar?
But when I look to what experience? Sorry, I didn't. Oh. Oh yeah, there's a lot of healthy production. I mean, organic food, if it has no residues, is good for the environment. And if it's done according to the agroecological principles I mentioned at the very beginning, where also we make sure that the farmers are rewarded for their work and not always the price pushed down so that they hardly can make it. Because that about half of the hungry people, or even more, are farmers. So how is it when you grow the food, you can't even afford to buy the little things you don't have? So I think we need to change that and make sure that the farmers are rewarded properly for their work. And through the organic agriculture or the permaculture, agroecology, I think these are systems and ways of production which respect the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, which we have to do. There's so much evidence. You can look at how much research has been done in this to show that it is productive, but it's also healthy. And even in areas where it's a bit less productive, because you don't put this huge amount of fertilizer in there and pesticides, you have enough. Because don't forget, we are still, on a global scale, wasting more than 40% of our food. So to buy smaller amounts and make sure they're all consumed, rather than to buy a big amount cheap, you can buy a bit less for the same price, a bit less, and then you consume it. You don't put it into even the compost, or you don't throw it away. And in the transformation, in the food value chain, we also lose a lot, and that's why the farmers, at the end of the day, gets maybe about less than 10% of the value of what's sold at the consumption end. Why do we need to lose so much in between? Okay, people have to carry food and put it in the shelf, but farmers need to be really rewarded more for their hard work. And in an organic or agroecology system, that's where it's going to happen. And that's why I think if you want to do something, always when it's available, take the organic one, take the sustainably produced, certified or not, it doesn't matter. There's fair trade. So there's all kind of labels which will help you, I think, make the right choice. And don't go for the cheapest. That's exactly how you're going to ruin your future and your health in particular, because at least you know that if it's organic, they won't have any residues, except the one which are all over in the water. We can't remove them sometimes. And that's also a good reason why we should move to 100% sustainable production of our foodstuff. Because we cannot overload our body with more and more of this pesticide and residues of all sorts. Where the industry, quite often what they do when we reach the limit, they make it higher, like in the water. Several times the level of glyphosate in water has been changed because all the waters were polluted. That's not the way to go.
Gracias, Hans. Otra pregunta también relacionada con el control de plagas dice, ¿se conoce el efecto del cambio climático en la biología de plagas y enfermedades? ¿Tiene usted algunos ejemplos que nos pueda compartir de cambios en la biología de alguno de estos?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's exactly. So, you know, plagues like the locusts in Africa, they come and go and all this. We have, and I was part of the development of 2 biological solutions for this, which can be combined. But, you know, they've never been applied because, again, the chemical industry has been behind this and basically forced the use of old pesticides rather than these novel biological products. So you can see, again, you know, where the hand of the bad guys is. When we have a major pest problem like the one I worked on in Africa, one of them, like the cassava mealybug or the chincho de la yuca, I learned a few words when I was looking for the beneficial insect in Latin America. You know, I traveled from Mexico all the way to Paraguay and back, and actually Argentina. I went there to look for beneficial insects. So we had a big pest problem in Africa. I found the solution in Latin America, an insect which we went to quarantine, we brought to Africa. The problem is solved permanently, no chemicals, very little money has been spent. So you just can see how, if we do things right, and that means that we solve the problem at the root cause. If you use a pesticide, you treat the symptoms. So you have to go back and find, okay, what is the root cause of your problem? And you try to figure it out. Imported pests, wrong agronomic practices, wrong varieties, maybe the planting time wasn't right. So basically, if you understand your pest problem well, you can, in most cases, deal with it on a preventive manner, and that's what we want. Good doctors prevent the disease. They have to control sometimes, but the most important is to prevention. And I think that's what we need to do more, is prevention, using the right crops, right varieties, at the right time for the right climate. So that's what I can say. I mean, there's many examples out there of very successful natural control of pests, diseases, and weeds.
Muchas gracias, Hans. Bueno, ya son las 11 de la mañana, tuvimos una hora de compartir experiencia, muchas preguntas que se nos pasó rápidamente el tiempo, nos quedan varias preguntas ahí, pero yo creo que por honor al tiempo y a tu tiempo, ¿no es cierto?, de haber entregado durante esta mañana, te agradecemos nuevamente el compartir las experiencias, los conocimientos con este grupo de estudiantes, docentes, académicos que nos acompañan el día de hoy, agricultores también, agradecer ahí a pequeños agricultores que nos acompañan y a invitados, empleadores, egresados que nos están acompañando el día de hoy. Así que muchas gracias por transmitirnos esta reflexión, esta profundización en los temas de la agricultura y de la alimentación sostenible y saludable. Muchas gracias nuevamente y gracias a todos. Hans.
Thank you also, Lorena. I want to really appreciate the fact that I was able to be with you. And I will send you my modified PowerPoint, and you can share it with everybody. You can put it on your website if you want to. You can share my email address. And if anyone has any questions or want to be in touch with me, you know, I really would be happy to do so. So don't hesitate to, you know, be in touch, or even you from the university. I'll be happy to be on a webinar or something someday.
Muchas gracias, Hans. En eso estaremos entonces contactándote para seguir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Algunas actividades. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos.
Okay, that will be great. Okay.
Chao, gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye now.